part about responding to the situation is to do things in ways which are timely and well run. They provoke a good atmosphere. They feel right. They carry a kind of quality
Yes.
of well-meaningness and good practice. Things are auspicious. They can feel right, or they can feel wrong, and they can be unsuitable, or somehow don't pay attention to the wholeness of the situation. Hello, Darren.
Hi, Malcolm. How are you?
I'm well and very interested and looking forward to this.
Me too. Yeah, it's been a while, a few weeks, but yeah, and I'm just thinking about what theme is uppermost for you today. Is there anything that sort of you'd like to focus on?
There's a lot going on now with the British election, and the very first encounter between the party leaders was an appalling absence of whole intelligence, in that the interrelating became a kind of caricature of kids in a playground, really, grown up, and there wasn't time to really develop and understand what was going on and how they were genuinely going to respond to very, very complex situations, which are appearing internationally, economically, in terms of the social structures of our country. And they clearly weren't really in touch with, weren't given an opportunity to be really in touch with their feelings and how they're feeling, how their sense of themselves impacted what they were doing. I mean, it was very superficial and not impressive.
And do you know what? It's funny you should mention that, Malcolm, because one thing that just came to mind was the difference between how they responded to the situation and the interrelating and how, the sort of the quality of the responses versus the quality of the questions from the audience. Really thought through. There was real feeling in the lady that was talking about the NHS, and she's had so many difficult experiences, really difficult experiences. But they all were. I felt all of the questions were had a lot of whole intelligence in them. Talking about how would we respond to the situation, or how would they respond to the situation, and being very heartfelt, reflective of what had happened. So there's a lot of that in there. But I agree. The format just wasn't conducive to whole intelligence, was it?
Yeah. But it raises the question about, why is it important that people pay attention to whole intelligence? And what are we on about? Why? What do we mean by it? And I think what we mean by it is that it's what we know in our bones is, and feels true, is that when we occasionally see something or hear something, hear somebody give a speech, or we witness an event, or we read about somebody doing something really profoundly good and creative in the world, we are, in a sense, uplifted. We are stimulated. We feel better in ourselves when we see good functioning, high performance, good relationships, creative efforts. We are touched by that. And equally, we are affected when we see things that are bungling or ugly or badly performed or done poorly. And it's like, I think we have an inbuilt aesthetic resonance sort of not quite sure the words to use here, but somehow we resonate to certain things happening that are well functioning and full of whole intelligence, and equally we're put off by things which lack it.
Yes.
We're jarred, or not satisfied. So if this is so, and we have an inbuilt sensitivity or a capacity to discriminate between what's whole intelligence and what is frankly rubbish or very poor, untimely, badly performed stuff. If we've got that sensibility, that particular way of discriminating, discerning which is which, and having our kind of our bullshit detectors operating, then this really means that there's something grounded and very real about whole intelligence. It's not just some concept plucked from thin air. It's something that we know deeply in our bones when we see it and when it's absent.
Do you know what? You made me think about I mean, without being overly political, but it's in the news today, is the amazing remembering of D-Day, the 80-year anniversary, and all of the effort and the quality of thought and the emotion that's gone into that on both sides of the channel. And at the same time, the fact that our Prime Minister didn't stay for it all, and came back for an ITV interview. And I really wonder what that looks like when you put it through a whole intelligence lens. That decision, if you think about it, how is he responding to the situation? This is like a really, really important thing, particularly now in this day and age, really important event. And yet his response was to leave early to go and do this ITV interview, which kind of means that that's more important. So I wonder how, if you put it through the whole intelligence lens, if you like, if we wash it through whole intelligence, how that responding to the situation was thought through, what it means in terms of the relationships, the interrelating, the relationships to the people that were there, versus, a bit like there was a picture of the leaders, the key leaders that were there, and he wasn't there. He was represented by the foreign secretary. So, like, what does that say? I mean, and then how he must have felt about that. I wonder how he was feeling about it. Did he feel bad, or how did other people feel about it? What viscerally, how did that feel, that decision, even though it's made like 6 weeks ago, and what he must be reflecting on about that, about how he responded to the situation, and therefore whether he could have experimented. Yes, ITV wanted to have an interview, but maybe he goes, no, do you know what? Actually, this is more important. They're going to have to wait, and like experimented with not sticking to the program. And so I washed through it, and then all of those things added up. I find it fascinating and informative in terms of the way whole intelligence can then help us, to make good quality decisions and have the experience that you mentioned, the positive sort of experience.
Yes. Well, I think you've given a very good example of how something didn't feel right. There was something not right about it. There was something that was out of balance, or too self-centered or narcissistic, or something just didn't land well with you as a very normal bloke, but also very with high principles and interests in your world. The kind of work you do with servicemen, for instance, would have added to your sense of dishonoring. That is part of the discomfort that you feel. It's like it didn't honor the occasion enough.
Yes. There's the whole intelligence of the decision, and then there's the whole intelligence of how I experienced the result of the decision.
Yes, because we're connected, so we are impacting one another all the time, and our actions count, and our choices count, and what we prioritize, and what are our values, what do we value most. And
Yes.
I think this is partly, we see lots and lots of evidence of this, that people are very hurried, they rush over things, they don't give attention to what really matters.
Yes.
And I guess that he didn't either.
Mm.
He didn't keep his values clear enough of, and his responsibilities. So part about responding to the situation is to do things in ways which are timely and well run. They provoke a good atmosphere. They feel right. They carry a kind of quality
Yes.
of well-meaningness and good practice. Things are auspicious. They can feel right, or they can feel wrong, and they can be unsuitable, or somehow don't pay attention to the wholeness of the situation, the
Yes.
wholeness of the context.
And I find that interesting as well, Malcolm, because I was talking to some friends about collusion last week, the whole topic of collusion, and we were thinking about it in different levels, if you like. And one of the examples we were talking about was like the post office scandal or the blood scandal, and how, if you think we were thinking about it in the context of collusion, and yet you could also think about it in the context of whole intelligence, couldn't you? How of all those little examples of a lack of whole intelligence have sort of built up over time to create this sort of monster of a situation that destroyed lives, and people have died. I mean, it doesn't get any more serious. So it's like all of those, although you might think, well, it's just one decision, or it's just one example of a poor practice of whole intelligence, actually they do add up over time.
Yes,
and like
massively.
You said, and
because we are not totally isolated individuals. We are connected. We're parts of communities. We're parts of systems. We're part of groups that we identify with and share things with. And if something happens, if we're part of a group and somebody does something which is really antithetical to good practice, or is disrespectful to third parties in some way, do we go along with it, or do we have the courage to stand up and say, no, I'm not doing that, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel fair to so-and-so, or doesn't feel a totally honest process. It's about integrity.
Yes.
And integrity comes from, in a sense, congruent, holistic responses to situations. And it's dealing with handling the complexity that can arise when there are different values circulating. And so that we go back to some of the sort of Johnson Partygate stuff. There was just so many people knew that it wasn't right, but they still did it because they were caught up in something where they were not responding in an embodied way, tuning into what their actual feelings were and their own values. They got caught in something.
Yes.
And caught in being popular, or going along with the crowd, or whatever. So that people with whole intelligence are sometimes going to have to deal with complicated things and stand up for things that they value. That's part of having this kind of widespread understanding, a wide understanding of how the world works.
Yes.
Ultimately, how it works.
Yeah, and building on that, I also think it's like that situation, like Partygate, for example. It's almost, whole intelligence is almost a way, I think, to thinking about that example, to have a check and balance around your values and integrity, because it sort of forces you to pause, doesn't it? Like, in that situation, how am I responding to this situation? Is this is this right or wrong? How do I feel about it? How do I literally feel about it? You know, do I feel good? Is my stomach churning? Or, you know,
Yeah.
am I feeling a sense of downness because it's not right?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and what does it mean about my relationships? Is it I'm prioritizing my work relationships because I want to get along or be liked? You know, how am I
Yeah.
reflecting on that? What do I think?
Yeah.
You know, and then hang on a minute, perhaps I can experiment with not doing this or calling it out.
Yeah.
But you know, it's almost like I feel like whole intelligence. It can be a process that you can really use as a way to pause and check and
Yeah.
balance yourself.
Yes.
Mm,
And I think that, it's easy to be pessimistic and rather despondent about things going on in the world because there's so many examples of things being done which are not right,
mm,
which are highly manipulative or corrupt or um, narcissistically driven.
mm.
Um, but equally, I think in the long term, the inbuilt values that these that whole intelligence is not something that we've invented.
Mhm.
It's there. It's part of the human condition
Yes.
that we've all of our predecessors have had to respond to different situations and have found that the things which matter in the long term are good values, um, socially just considerations,
Mm.
and the, if you like, the good things that they can, and we're building on these. It's better that people are more in touch with their feelings.
Mhm.
Better that they are um, doing. More people are doing therapy. More people are confronting the traumatized past things in their lives. Um, they're being willing to look for support around managing their grief or their anger. These are all developments which are helping to increase human beings' sophistication and ability to handle the complexities of life.
Yes.
And
Yes.
unfortunately, there are other things going which about turning people into being more robotic and tick boxing, which
Mm.
are rather counter to dealing with complexity. They're sort of simplifying and oversimplifying life,
Mm.
forcing us to make decisions about either I'm this or I'm that, or so there are different currents going on all the time.
Well, do you know what? And that also reminds me. I mean, we were talking about the big things like the D-Day uh, commemorations, and also, you know, I was thinking back to Wednesday because Claire was off to London to do it was like a fireside chat around what she's doing in the business she works. And so I was taking the dog out for a walk early on Wednesday, and the weather was lovely. It was cold, a bit cold, but it was bright, you know. And I don't know why, but I had read. We were walking up the road, and I just whole intelligence sort of sprang into my head. I honestly don't know why, and I sort of thought, God, you know what? If I think about that now, as I was walking up the road, I was thinking about how am I responding to the situation? How am I responding to going for the walk? And I was thinking, no, I feel all right. You know, rather Claire was here, but okay, no, I'm feeling good. The weather's good. Um, and how am I relating? And then I was thinking, oh, interrelating. That's about me relating to another human, isn't it? And I thought, well, hang on a minute, it's not really. It's about how am I relating to my environment? You know, how am I relating to the trees, to and then the smells. So how are the smells making me feel? You know, because I could feel viscerally, oh, it smells nice, you know, and I was feeling quite relaxed. You know, we got this little sort of wood that we walked the dog in, and I was thinking, do you know what? It's lovely to be in here. A bit of self-reflection. It's lovely to be in here. Well, maybe I'll take a different route. And I did. And it was like this, and I guess where I got to with it was by thinking about whole intelligence, I became uber present. I was like really present I was only taking the dog for a walk, but I felt everything. And it was a lovely experience. And I remember thinking, should we be doing this every day? You know, not like at once in a moment. And I think that's part of it, Malcolm, is the remembering
Yeah,
these these essentials that we have as humans that we can tap
Absolutely.
into at literally any time.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the challenge with whole intelligence is remembering it and practicing, and
Yes.
yeah, it's a very
Yes.
interesting.
I'm thinking at the moment that, in a sense, whole intelligence is another dimension. We've got huge dimensions of categories of life or approaches to human existence, one of which is politics.
Mm-hmm.
And with that is all the questions about power and conflict and nationality and identification and all these. It's a whole province
Mm-hmm.
of politics.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a whole province of what gets labeled as spirituality. Spirituality, for a lot of people, they think, oh, that's to do with religion or something. And of course, that's really out of date now, because all sorts of people are registering that there's something about our consciousness, our awareness of ourselves, which is understood by in every school or every um, intelligent process, including the ancient traditions. But there, and and somehow I want whole intelligence to be having a kind of political wing and an interest in the way of the world and in dealing with power and issues to do with that, but also a spiritual wing to do with our deep understanding of what it means to be a human being alive on the planet, beleaguered planet, and what is our personal responsibility? What's our opportunity for making a difference?
Oof.
And part of that is, without any question, is about deep, deep respect for otherness, a positive otherness, because there's otherness is often talked about as othering people and making them more distant and objectifying them, but realizing that people are actually, if we take a different line, they're people like us. We share humanity, we share in the human experience, and we all have life, and we all grow old, and we all die. And
Yes.
these are some of the obvious basic things that unify, could unify, should unify our whole global population, so that we stop little identifications with this or that ism or this or that nationality. We need more people, not less, who are people who are cross-cultural and not always tied to just the fixed notions of their background and so on. We need people who are experimental and flexible and able to work in different cultures and respectfully with difference.
Yes.
So I'm going on a bit here.
Well, maybe that's something for the next conversation. I mean, that sounds really interesting. I mean, that broadens it and thinks about it in a different way.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think it's a good place to stop. Yeah. About it's all to do with being contented with quality life.
Absolutely.
That's what we want.
Sounds good to me. But I'll look forward to exploring that with you, Malcolm.
Okay.
Yes. And I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Go well.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Malcolm.
Bye.